What an interesting week it has been. Elon Musk is playing catch with 23-story skyscrapers. Trump went on Bloomberg. Harris went on Fox. Very fun stuff. And here I am just trying to figure out if we're going to have a housing market crash or massive hyperinflation. So I've been kind of consuming a couple different videos from a couple different guys who are kind of giving their thoughts on an economic theory, kind of evaluating the market and what they think is going to happen. And I've kind of compelled that a little bit, make it a little more digestible for y'all. And I'm hoping I can add a little value. I am 2 cigars, a double shot of espresso, and 1 Americano in, and I am tired, man. I finally was like, dude, I need a shower. I'm in the robe, but I'm really trying to just lock it in, get through this so I can have this ready to upload tomorrow morning so that y'all can have this on your Saturday. So, try to stick with me on this. I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as I can. There is a lot of content. I was really hoping for this video to be trimmed down and be a little shorter than my last ones. Unfortunately, it's probably going to be even longer. And again, as always, this is not legal advice or financial advice. So let's dive in, start getting an idea of what some of these guys are saying about the housing market and economy here in America, and go from there. I even put together a fancy-pantsy little scribbled together crappy sheet of paper for y'all. So we've got the Real Estate Mindset channel. This guy is kind of talking about the market is crashing. He claims the housing market is the worst it's ever been, and you should be renting and not buying. And then the Uneducated Economist, he's pretty popular if you've heard of him. He likes to sit in his car and give economic theory, and he has a little less mainstream economic theory. And so he's not really, these two guys are very different, and they're saying roughly the exact opposite stuff. This guy's kind of breaking down economic theory and explaining it in a very nuanced way and giving his take on it. Again, a lot of it is not super mainstream, and it does make sense though, and I do find it fascinating. So I wanted to throw him in the mix and see what y'all thought. I do find myself asking questions here and there. In this video, he talks about the credible threat theory. And basically, it's that the feds can't stimulate the economy anymore the way that they have been able to do in the past with the tools they have available. And so the only way and means they have of manipulating the economy is through confusion and manipulation of perception of us, the masses. Very interesting theory. We'll get into more of that later. And then we have ClearValue Tax. This guy, I went over his video recently. I'm going to include that same video in the mix. I still need to get to episode 2 or part 2 or whatever of the hyperinflation, the great meltdown. But basically, he's predicting the exact opposite that this guy is. This guy's saying is we're crashing, or we're going into a crash and the market's really bad and you shouldn't buy. This guy's saying, no, you should buy because hyperinflation is around the corner in a year and a half, 2 years. Around 2026, I think, is the year he mentioned. You're going to see potential hyperinflation. And if you don't have your money in assets that will go up with inflation, you're going to get screwed. You're not going to have much buying power, even if you have a lot of money in the bank. When inflation goes up and up and up, you lose all your purchasing power. Your money becomes less valuable. And a lot of the things that basically cause inflation, one of which is money printing, devalues your money, and it causes the cost of goods and services to go up. So this guy's saying buy an asset, buy financial assets, buy real estate. This guy is saying don't buy real estate. This is the worst market ever, and we're either crashing or headed to a crash, or gonna crash soon. So let's get into it a little bit more. Let's start off with the Real Estate Mindset guy. He is by far, I would say, the most annoying, not to be rude. He doesn't seem like a bad guy, but I don't know why he seems very clickbaity. And although he makes some really good points and gives some really good data, it's the least helpful video of the bunch. And it feels very like clickbaity and doomsy, and like he's just playing off the potential for the analytics to indicate that things are bad or getting worse. And there's not a whole lot of value in the video. So let's go.
I just would love to know kind of how the committee is thinking about the persistence we've seen in housing inflation. Do you think you can return to 2% with housing inflation where it is? Yeah.
Welcome back to Real Estate Mindset. Today's video is going to be absolutely bonkers. Now, the data is in. And so
Oh, I'm already getting annoyed. Okay, let's just jump in.
From the University of Harvard, and some of the conclusions that they've made on the housing market, to say the least, are very, very interesting, especially when they say in a few years, the only thing that is going to drive home growth is immigration. But I'm going to start the video out by taking you guys into my local MLS, because remember, real estate is about going on in the housing market.
Ugh,
And if
okay,
anyone
come on,
was to
dude.
ask me, hey, Travis, is now a good time to buy a house? I would say right now is the worst time to buy in the history of the United States from a mathematical standpoint. And because the housing market is so toxic, the math matters even more. And so what
There you have it. Okay, so worst market ever.
I'm going to do again, I'm going to start by taking you into the MLS. I'm going to show you guys how the math works. And this is something that generally you pay a realtor tens of thousands of dollars to do, if they even do it at all.
I have to jump in as a realtor because that's kind of a shot, and I think that's hilarious because this is like the most baby realtor skill ever, which is pulling comps, which is like just the tip of the iceberg for what you do if you're a good realtor. This is just the bare minimum. You have to literally be able to pull comps to valuate a property, to be able to tell your clients what they should list it for or what you should offer if you're working with buyers, if they want to offer for a property. You know, you can tell them, hey, this is what I legitimately think it's worth, you know, so they can get an idea of where they want to start on offering. And you do that by looking for houses that are similar to that to the house, whether it's the house that the clients want to buy or they want to sell, and you're looking for houses that are as similar as possible. You know, amount of bedrooms, bathrooms, square footage. You know, pictures go a long way in the caliber of the interior, the neighborhood, stuff like that. And then obviously, you know, it needs to be around the same time. You know, you can't, if you go too far back, if you go like 2 years back, it's not the same market. So you're limited to how far you can go back in time looking for houses that have sold. And then you're also trying to look for like kind products. So you're comparing apples to apples. So you can go to your clients with these analytics and comps and go, here's what I think it's worth. Here's what you should offer or sell it for, blah, blah, blah. So honestly, what a jab. This is literally the bare bones of being an agent. It's like literally one of the first things you have to learn to do. And there's so much more to it than, than that. But all right.
One, we have to price our market out, which you guys are looking at
I don't even understand why he's doing all of this, but okay.
Right here is what's called the MLS, or the multiple listing service. This is why you guys need realtors. Now, if I know nothing about the housing market and I see this is overwhelming amount of information and I'm flying blind. What I need to do is figure out the price of my market. I know.
All right, let me just skip ahead because what he's going to do is he's going to go back to 2022. I don't know why he's going to go back to, I guess, pre-COVID maybe, I don't know. And then what he's going to do is he's going to get a he's only going to look for houses in 2022, and then he's going to look in a particular city, and he's going to look at all the houses that all sold through the entire year of 2022. Then he's going to average them together to get an average per square foot. And then he's going to take that average per square foot, which is 148 dollars per square feet, and he's going to go down. He's going to go like 20% down to get like 110 or $120 a square foot. And he's going to go, then that's a good deal. And he's going to go, let's see right now in this market if there's any houses listed at 120 a square foot right now in this market. And then he finds a few and he's like, oh, look at that. There's so many houses that are listed even below what the average per square foot was in 2022. And he's using this, I guess, as ammo to make the claim that the market's really, really bad and we're having a housing market crash. So let me skip ahead a little bit because this is what he's doing right here. And let me keep jumping ahead. Okay, so here's where he gets to like, these are so many houses, guys. So look at all those houses.
And everything you're looking at right now should be about 20%, roughly 20% under 2022 values. Literally, everything is on your screen should be under market value. But I will also say that we don't really know what market value is because the housing market is so broke. But look at how much easier this is. Now, if I find a
I don't get it. It's like a little over a dozen houses. Like, okay. You saw how many houses there were earlier, right? Like, okay.
home that I want, say it's this house. I will select it. I'm going to do an analysis now on the sub.
And this is still not a cheap house. This is a 289. Oh my God, this is an expensive house. Like, I mean, it's not nothing, I mean, especially for a regular person. I mean, I know people who do pretty well financially, and this is not far away from the top of their budget. I mean, they're, maybe 315, 320, 350 is kind of the top echelon of their budget. So this would honestly be around where they'd like to be comfortable. So this is by no means a cheap house, and he's using this to kind of indicate that the housing market. I mean, it's a big house, like
subdivision. So instead of using Kingwood, I'm just going to copy and paste this subdivision right here, which is Bear Branch Village. For the taxes, let's see what the county is. Here's the thing with Harris County, property taxes are going up. I'm going to hit includes taxes and insurance.
Okay, so this is where he just shows you how to calculate your payment, and he uses all of these different analytics to like, it's so bad, we're not even including homeowners insurance. And don't forget, you're never going to own your home, because if you don't pay your taxes, then they're going to come take it. Like, yeah, no crap, Sherlock. I'm trying to watch my language so I don't get
$324,000 loan. A mortgage stands for a death contract because you end up paying back $747,000 unless you refinance. You start the amortization schedule all over again. And to show you guys how bad this really is, understand that the first year you're making mortgage payments on that loan, only $3,500 goes towards principal and $21,000 goes towards straight raw interest. In fact, the total interest you pay over 30 years is $423,000. In other words, your real cost of interest is more like 120%. So if you're renting right now, understand more than likely, it depends on the size of the house and location, of course, but if it's equal size and of equal stature, you're going to be paying a lot more right now owning. And here's the other thing, you guys. This is not even counting property taxes and insurance. When we count property taxes and insurance and we put that in an equation to calculate an interest rate, it's probably more like 150 to 160% interest rate. At least when I'm renting, I can save money and I can move whenever I want. Moving on.
Okay, so first off, on financing, I almost laugh at this because it's like, welcome to financing. Yes, you pay interest on the front end because the bank wants to get as much of that interest as possible. They're in the business of making money. Two, they know if you pay this loan off early or you refinance and pay this loan off early, they're not going to realize a lot of this interest. So they're trying to collect as much of it upfront as possible. And the one thing he doesn't mention is there's an easy way to, be strategic by budgeting and paying aggressive on your principal to avoid paying a lot of this interest, even if you don't pay the loan off early and refinance it for a better rate. You just literally, it's called principal payments. And yes, the banks will make it hard. They don't want you to do it because it eats up the principal, which will cause there to be less interest paid over time. And so you will save a lot of money on interest. So, I mean, and he shockingly doesn't mention any of that. Wow, I'm so surprised. Number two is he mentions like the whole rental thing. Like, you could just rent because you can leave any time you want and save money. It's so much better. It's like there's something called a lease. Anyone who has, and most people, especially early on in life, have to rent. You can't buy a home. And anyone who's rented an apartment knows that is not how this works. You don't just get to leave anytime you want. When I was working at the real estate law firm with the real estate attorney and running a title company for him, I can't tell you how many calls we get from clients who were renting and they were getting screwed or, were trying to get out of their leasing, couldn't. They were locked in. So this idea, and a lot of these leases, I mean, the minimum are typically a year, 12 months, sometimes 18 months. I've done 18 months easily before, you get 2-year leases. I mean, this idea that you can just willy-nilly leave is not true. There's oftentimes consequences. Sometimes there's no language that allows you to break lease early at all. Other times it's going to require money. So it's like, okay, well, great. If you're rich and you're just willing to let that, go to collections or pay the whole lease up front so you can leave early, or, there is specific language to allow you to get out. Maybe if you find a tenant to replace you. I mean, there's all these factors, but the fact that you can just leave if you want to is almost never the case. And there's plenty of other problems that come with renting. And don't get me wrong, I've rented a lot. There's plenty of benefits that come with renting. I'm not Mr. Anti-renting. Like, this guy sounds like Mr. anti-buying a house or whatever. I like the idea of building equity in a property you own. And yeah, he's gonna, talk about how you never own it because if you don't pay your property taxes, they'll come and get it. But that's just like one more thing. It's like, yeah, no crap. If you don't pay your property taxes, they'll come take that. It's like, yes, but that's just being an adult, and I'm Mr. like taxation is theft. Don't get me wrong. But at the end of the day, some of this is really just like, yeah, if you don't pay for your things, they take them. That's kind of just how it is. And unfortunately, property tax is a part of the game when it comes to land, real estate, you name it. And taxes are a factor of everything. If you drive around with no auto insurance, there's going to be consequences. So, this idea that you can just break your lease at any time is it's not true at all. And I think it's stupid.
Move whenever I want. Moving on to Zillow's housing market report for September 2024. A couple things from Zillow. Lower mortgage rates brought both buyers and sellers back to the market in September.
And this is taking a really long time, so I'm just kind of jump to the gist. Basically, he's going to go over a bunch of analytics that leads him to believe we are experiencing a housing market crash. That's really the gist of it. And
in a way, you guys are just glorified renters themselves because you will never, ever
here's the property tax thing. We might as well hit on this.
Your home because of things like property tax. If you stop paying your property taxes, and we have a massive problem here in Texas with that, the city will sell your information to a bunch of tax collector wolves who will try to foreclose and take your home.
Does this sound personal? I feel like this is personal. Like maybe someone didn't pay their taxes or something. Okay.
Home away. So you never outright own your home. Just want to make that clear. Talking about home values, the typical U.S. home value is $360,999. The typical monthly mortgage payment, assuming a 20% down payment, is $1,760.
So I think I'm just going to skip through all of this. He pulls Fannie Mae stuff where Fannie Mae is approving loans they shouldn't be, and I agree with honestly most of this.
Things wrong with the housing market. There's too much Wall Street investment and speculation. When we jump into Market Watch, we get to learn what Fannie Mae CEO says about the housing market, which is they've never seen a housing market like this before. This article came out yesterday, October 16th. Now, obviously, Fannie Mae is the long arm of the Federal Reserve. That's what I like.
I need to skip ahead, guys, because I'm at 17 minutes. So I'm just going to try to jump through all this. But yeah, again, he's just looking at a bunch of data, and it's not necessarily untrue that he's using to say that the housing market is crashing. Now, this particular part is, Fannie Mae was helping buy out loans that they shouldn't be, and to prop up lenders, which I do agree with them on this for sure.
Law. And my question is, well, then why did Fannie Mae buy them? Home sales are on track for the worst year since 1995. Home ownership is still part of an American dream. Most Americans aspire to own a home. About 84% of respondents in 2023 survey by LendingTree said they want to become a homeowner. Housing costs pushed up by unstable variables. Does that include inflation? It's not just the challenges of saving for a down payment, so nothing about the price, okay, and of navigating elevated mortgage rates, again, nothing on the price, that are making home ownership unaffordable for many Americans. See that? Unbelievable, right? Rising insurance costs also mean homeowners are struggling more to fit their mortgage payments into their budget. Unlike a mortgage payment, which remains the same throughout the life of the loan if it's a fixed rate, insurance costs have surged over the last few years.
Welcome to inflation. Okay.
Market. So I thought that was really good. Definitely come back to check this out. A lot of information here if you guys just want general.
Again, I'm not trying to hate on this guy. He does give a lot of good information. Yeah, want to try to be as unbiased as possible.
Stats on what's going on. Figure 5, which is monthly payments of the median priced home, now exceed $3,000. Now, it's important to first understand that these numbers are adjusted. This even went up. This is unnatural because, again, 2012 QE, remember that when you look at prices. A couple of Harvard's high inflation and taxes and other costs are high, not our income, further pressuring the state of tightening legislation. In 2019, we had less than 500,000, but look at it in 2023, what, 4 million? Are you kidding me? Less than 500,000 immigrants in 2029 to 2.6 million in 2022 and 3.3 million in 2023 asylum seekers and 5 million. If we're renting right now, if we're choosing to be on the sidelines, we potential sole
Let's wrap up
driver
with the
of
conclusion real quick.
population and household growth. In conclusion, what does all of this mean? Well, in my opinion, this is what this means. If we're renting right now, if we're choosing to be on the sidelines, we have time. We should be taking our time. We should continue to save our money as renters. I pay way less money renting right now. I can move whenever I want. I have the ability to
Whenever you want.
take the money I'm saving and buy gold or treasuries if I want to. Something very safe. So although I think, again, it is the worst time to buy a house right now, maybe you'll get lucky and find a steal. It's still, no matter the housing market, no matter the condition, it's always important to use the math over your emotions. Now, other than that, I'm sorry it's taken me so long to get you guys another housing market update video. I've been doing a lot. We plan on taking 2025 by storm and changing the world, and that's not easy to do. So if you guys can, share the video, like it, comment below, and if you guys are out there investing in real estate, you guys already know I wish you luck, and I hope you win.
This is a terrible market. You should not buy. Good luck if you're buying. Okay. So to summarize, he's saying, you know, we're in a housing market crash. There's a housing market crisis. The prices are coming down. The average per square foot is coming down, and you should not be buying right now because it's trending down and it's probably going to get worse, and it's not affordable right now. I think that's the gist of what he's saying. He does make a lot of other good points, but you know, that is the gist of what he's saying is don't buy right now. And the prices are pulling back. It's a bad market. The market's crashing. It's unaffordable, etc. Okay. So let's go to this guy who says the exact opposite. He says, hey man, you know, hyperinflation's around the corner. And if you want to hedge your bets and put your money somewhere safe, put it in financial assets, put it in real estate, you name it, because those products and assets will go up with hyperinflation. So let's see what he has to say on the topic real quick.
This story, it starts with the U.S. government's, so the U.S. federal government's national debt crisis. It's going to
So I'm going to skip ahead a little bit, but basically here he's starting off the explanation for making an argument for why is hyperinflation around the corner, and a lot of it has to do with how much debt we've accumulated. So he's going to go into how much debt we have, and then when we get to here, he's going to talk about the revenue, because the debt to revenue relationship is very important. And so this is just where we as a country get our revenue from. And then this is going to be our revenue. This is how much we've made up to this point in the year so far. So we'll probably make a little bit more. And then this is our estimated spending for the year. So, and I've gone over this already once before, so I'm trying to be quick, but obviously we're spending a lot more than we're making. So that's a problem. And then here is our primary cost and expenditures as a nation. As you can see, our interest payments on our debt are number 3, the third most expensive cost as a country that we have. Yeah, that's crazy. Let me just skip ahead.
about $2 trillion. Now, this is also coming from the Treasury's website. So this is another problem. It says that as of August 2024, the government will spend over $1 trillion a year on interest payments.
So we're spending $1 trillion a year just on interest on the debt that we have to pay to people who hold the debt.
Interest rates, just think about it. For the full year, if the government's going to collect $5 trillion in income from taxes, right? So $5 trillion, and they're going to spend $1 trillion on interest payments. That's 20% of tax collections. So what's going to happen when that gets increased to 30%, 50%, 100%? It's just going to be, and this is unsustainable, and it's just getting worse. This is ridiculous. It's like a house of cards. So it's eventually going to collapse. However, by lowering interest rates, it just buys more time. It's a stalling technique. Now, some people are going to say that the US government, the Federal Reserve, they can just print the money, right? And I'll say that you are absolutely correct. Yes, they can. However, if they do that, if they print trillions of more dollars, you know what's going to happen. You know the consequences. That's going to skyrocket inflation. Yeah. Now, I want you to look at the trajectory that we're on. The red line is government spending.
All right, I'm going to skip ahead again. Obviously, here's how much money we're making. Here's how much money we're spending. And you can see the gap between these is getting bigger and bigger. So, yeah, not good. Here's where he talks about the shutdown. Oh, no, we need to increase the budget ceiling.
It's more than Obama. And look at the Biden-Harris combo. They're going to do the same thing. They're going to spend like crazy. They added a record amount of national debts, more than Trump. So the national debts, it doesn't matter who wins. It's going to increase, and the interest.
He's making some good points, right? So no matter which candidate wins, they're going to spend a whole bunch of money. Again, it's going to lead to inflation. Inflation. So he's gone through all these points of inflation's around the corner, and it all makes sense to me, if I'm being completely honest, and it tracks way better than Mr. Something Sinister is happening in the housing market, and it's going to explode, and you shouldn't buy in.
Interest payments will increase as well. Okay, now just think about this. Let's run this scenario where the federal government learns how to balance their budget. They cut spending. And okay, this is a joke. This is never going to happen. But just think about it.
I'm going to skip ahead.
So they cannot afford that. They cannot afford to have a deep recession or high unemployment. You know why? If there's a deep recession or high unemployment, then tax collections go down. And then that's going to leave us in the same position.
Right, the revenue will go down. So even if we miraculously don't spend any more money than we're already tracking to spend, our revenue goes down, and that gap gets even bigger that way.
A big deficit, and then the government would have to borrow more money. The debt will keep going up, and the interest payments keep going up. So listen, in a deflationary environment, your pre-existing debts become more expensive to service. So it's just going to make the situation worse. So listen, I'm basically saying that the US government really put everyone in a bad spot, a very difficult spot. That's the truth. They left us with no good options. So if you're thinking, what do you mean? How can you be in a position where there are no good options? Isn't that being pessimistic or negative?
Yeah, and he uses just a metaphor. I'm going to skip past this.
That's circulating, that will actually solve the national debt crisis and inflation. It's if there's a technological breakthrough that's going to manipulate. And
I've talked about this already once, but yeah, AI, maybe some miraculous technological advance, but I don't think we can put our eggs in that basket right now.
Inflation gives the elite class an advantage. The advantage is first access to money.
Because they're holding assets, which is why you should buy assets, is the point he's making.
Okay, so what's the lesson here? The lesson is that you must invest in financial assets. This is not to get rich. This is for your protection. This is just to keep up with inflation. So I'm telling you, inflation is going to reaccelerate hard. Probably 2026, could be sooner. But that's going to be the start of the great melt-up. So more and more people are going to realize this, and I'm telling you, you have to get ahead of this. Now, for the average person, I'll give you some straightforward examples. One example would be buying a home.
Okay, so I've gone through all of this already in a prior video, so I'm not going to keep going. But yeah, so you get the gist. This guy, don't buy. This guy, buy. This guy says the market sucks. You shouldn't buy. It's probably going to trend down. This guy's saying, actually, I think hyperinflation is around the corner, and you should probably buy assets, including real estate, to hedge your bet so that when hyperinflation hits, your assets will be pulled up with it. And if this guy's right and you do what this guy says, you keep your money in your bank and you rent and you just save, you're going to get screwed. You're going to be one of the regular Joes who gets screwed because you're not going to have much buying power. Your cash in the bank is going to lose its value as they print more money, and your buying power is going to go down as inflation hits and the cost of goods and services go up. So your money's getting screwed in two different scenarios on both ends. So if this guy's right, now if this guy's not right and we don't see hyperinflation and we are on a downtrending market that's only going to get worse, well, then this guy's right. And he's probably right. You probably don't want to overburden yourself with too much debt right now and, end up in a position where you don't have much disposable capital because you don't want to get upside down. You don't want to take out a loan on a home that is going to trend down even more. And then you're going to be, what we call upside down. You're going to owe more money than it's worth. The likelihood of that happening is very low. This guy and this guy both go through estimates for growth on homes, and typically they're all ranging between 1 and 6% for this year, and 1 and 3% for next year. So chances are your home isn't going to go down like 5-20%, 5 to 20%, or more. Chances are it's going to stag and it's going to hold its value where it sits until potentially what is going to happen here. So I find myself leaning more towards ClearValue Tax. He seems to be making the more reasonable case. Only time will tell. This guy feels a little clickbaity, a little doomsy. Just kind of annoys me, if I'm being honest. I'm sure he's a great guy. I hate to do that, but yeah, I just find myself rolling my eyes and not disagreeing with him a little bit. So I'm leaning more towards ClearValue on that. And then if y'all have, let me see how much more time we have. Oh man, I'm at 31. We'll go through this guy real quick, just the very beginning, just to have a third opinion in the mix, and then I'll wrap it up, okay?
And how that impacts the joining in on today's video.
Nice fuzzy dice.
We're going to talk about how economic confusion works better than confidence. Now, this is something that I have really brought in with the credible threat theory, was the idea that if they can keep the narrative within the propagandized mainstream media, then people will not understand or know exactly what it is that the Federal Reserve is doing and how that impacts the economy, because people are looking at the mainstream media and believing these things that are being said. Like, just think about how much talk about the Federal Reserve lowering Fed funds rate and how that's going to impact the mortgage market. When you listen to some of the media, some of the mainstream media articles that are coming out, you are going to find that 4 weeks ago, it was pretty much locked in stone that if the Federal Reserve lowers rates, it's going to lower the mortgage rates. Everybody was convinced of this. But exactly the opposite happened. The Federal Reserve lowered the Fed funds rate and mortgage rates went up. Completely opposite of what it is that people were thinking was going to take place. And then on top of that, when you think about when the mortgage rates did come down, it was during a time in which the Federal Reserve was standing still. They didn't adjust interest rates. Like, the Federal Reserve hadn't lowered interest rates for the last year, but yet we saw mortgage rates go from 8% all the way down to 6%. But since the Fed has cut rates, the interest rates, the mortgage rates, have increased by almost a half a percentage point. Not quite, maybe a third of a percentage point.
Yeah, but they lowered it 50 basis points, 0.5%. And we were pretty much getting that exact 0.5% in anticipation for that lowering ahead of schedule because of the anticipation. And shortly after they actually did it, we got a blip back up, not the full 50 basis points by any means, the third of a percent or whatever that he's quoting. All right, I'm tracking. I've never heard this theory, but yeah, continue.
So we're finding that the actual impact to the economy is far different than what all the communication says out there. I mean, how many people are now saying that the Fed was too dovish, and that the jumbo rate cut has now sparked the idea of an inflationary scenario coming back to the economy? A lot of people are talking this way. But yet, if you truly understood the Fed funds rate and how they are operating, the Fed funds rate, even at the current location of right around that 5%, just under, that is still well above the neutral interest rate, which is a restrictive economy. They have not stimulated, like a lot of these economists are saying. they're in a stimulus program or stimulating monetary policy. That is not true. That is simply not true. They are in a restrictive policy well above the neutral interest rate. However, the people's perception in what it is that they are doing with their finances, with their investments, with their business, with their savings, that's all based on some other.
I don't know anyone that's saying that we're in a stimulating environment. You know, they're fighting inflation right now. That's why rates are high. So just because they reduced it 50 basis points doesn't mean they're not still practicing a restrictive policy, in my opinion. You know, they could have reduced it a whole lot more. 50 basis points is like, that's not a jumbo reduction, in my opinion. I mean, not in comparison to how aggressively they increased rates, you know, over the last like year and change. So, I mean, 50 basis points isn't a lot. Uh, and I would still, yeah, I agree with him. We're practicing restrictive policies right now. We're not printing a lot of money right now in this moment. And interest rates are, you know, I would say on average higher than they've been in a long time. All right, let's keep going.
Media narrative that doesn't really reflect the reality. See, when the Federal Reserve cuts the Fed funds rates, it takes 6 months to a year before that really impacts the
I agree with that. Yeah. We're never going to feel the impact initially. Those things happen over time, a long time from now.
economy. As people are saying, oh no, they made a mistake, they cut rates, and look what happened to the jobs market. That those two don't correlate. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, we can pretend that they do, but they don't correlate. Give it some months down the road, and then you can say, hey, this adjustment of interest rates at the Fed funds level is starting to impact the economy in a profound way. But what's occurring today has very little to do with the actual adjustments of the Fed funds rate and has everything to do with the people's perception. See, this is the one of the most like obscure ways.
This is where I'm not 100% sure, because he kind of is going on to say their really only primary tool they have is perception to manipulate to achieve their goals, rather than, and I dropped the comment on this actual episode, and I'm excited to see if he responds. It was 4 hours after he debuted the episode, and he had done a really good job of answering all the comments that came through initially. So I was late to the party watching the video. It is a 40-minute video, and my comment didn't come. You know, I didn't post it until 4 hours after. So we'll see if he gets to me and answers it. But basically, you know, when he says the feds don't have any way with the tools they have, like by increasing or decreasing rates, it doesn't actually affect the economy. And so they have no tools to actually stimulate the economy. I said, well, what about money printing? You know, wouldn't that be, you know, wouldn't that have a stimulating effect and an inflationary effect? And I mean, all my economic education tells me yes, it would. And I mean, as you can see during COVID, when the markets and jobs and things were kind of grid halted a lot to some degree. I mean, here in Texas, we kind of kept trudging along, no problem, but we were still bottlenecked in a lot of ways. There were less people going to work across the board, across the nation. So we were far less booming and bustling than a normal healthy market during COVID. And we saw massive stimulation to the markets, massive increase in prices, massive home purchasing in goods and services. People were paying for more stuff and buying more stuff, Amazon, you know, shopping, blah, blah, blah. So it felt stimulating from all that money printing that they were doing from the quantitative easing. And I'm wondering, you know, if is that when he says they don't have any tools, is he just referring to their rate increase and decreasing, and that has no effect anymore? And is money printing still something, or is he also saying no? Yeah, money printing doesn't affect anything either. I'm just curious. Not I don't. It's not that I disagree with him. I'm just trying to track and I'm trying to understand his line of thought here, because it seems like he does know what he's talking about, and he touches on a few things that I looked up and I was like, okay, yeah, he's right. This makes sense. Da da da. But you know, I'm just bringing my understanding to the table. To try to, you know, align up with what he's saying and make it make sense to myself.
Of looking at the economy, but this is the way that the Federal Reserve has conditioned it. See, there was a time in which that they were wanting the markets, the people, the public, the administrator, everybody to pay attention to that adjustment of rates. They wouldn't communicate about it. Just one day you would wake up and boom, rates were adjusted, and everybody would start to incorporate this new monetary policy into their behavior. And it would have a profound impact on the economy. But since the days of quantitative easing 1, 2, 3, and 4, and the failure of the monetary policy to stimulate the economy with the adjustment of interest rates, it doesn't work. It's obvious.
Maybe what he's saying is they're doing the money printing and quantitative easing because adjusting interest rates stopped working. That I could track and that I could follow, and maybe that's what he's saying here. That may be what he's saying. So interesting. Well, I'm going to wrap it up because obviously he doesn't necessarily contradict with any of the other two people and their models. And just to kind of wrap it up, again, he has this very interesting, I think I agree with pretty much everything he's saying. I think he's making some really good points. It is very nuanced, but he is kind of just demonstrating what the Fed's doing and why they're doing it and the effects it's really having. And I think I agree with him on a lot of these points, the perception and stuff of that. It's very interesting. I'm going to keep digging into more of his videos, but I really like this guy, and he seems like he's bringing a lot of value and has, good content. And he seems quite well educated. He seems like he's self-educated on economics and economic theory. Now, as far as these two guys go, I paired them against each other for a reason because they have these very alternative views. And I wanted to try to get you as much information as possible so you can make decisions. And I'm going to be honest, I'm leaning more towards ClearValue Tax. Not that a lot of the data that this guy presented isn't true. It definitely checks off a lot of the time. But it is short-sighted in my opinion. It's very short-sighted, and he's also comparing it to just a few years ago, right? So if you're looking at the market right now, hindsight 2024, and you're looking at it in 2022 or 2020 or 2018, yes, I could see how you could easily go, this market sucks. I mean, there's no question it's overpriced, and I get it, right? But my bigger fear isn't necessarily a big housing market crash. My bigger fear is the hyperinflation model, and you're probably, I mean, this is a scarier thing in my opinion. Obviously, we don't want another housing market crash. I definitely am well studied on '07 and '08. Now, I will say, even though he does a good job of pointing out that Fannie Mae is approving some things that are a little shakier, that they probably shouldn't be running through some of these mortgages. And I've seen that in my own line of work since I do real estate. I have seen deals that probably shouldn't have gone through, and maybe some funny business, but it is far more regulated than it was in '07 and '08. But I could see the point being made that things are getting really loose, and you could maybe make an argument that things are looking a little more '08, '07-ish, maybe. But we're doing something now that we hadn't done ever before, and that we only started during the '08, '07, and '08 housing market crash, which we are printing money, and that's where it started. And so we are printing a massive amount of money. That is a totally new experiment. And I'm leaning towards ClearValue Tax and the hyperinflation theory. And my fear is really around this. But the good news is if this is the case, if you're strategic and you play the game right, you can position yourself to actually win pretty big. If you're holding assets and hyperinflation happens, even if we just get more inflation and it doesn't end up being hyperinflation, you're going to be in a better position because those assets are going to go up. rising tides lift ships, and the inflation is the water and your assets are the boat. So it's going to go up with it. So that's what I'm leaning towards, guys. I'm not going to bore you any longer. This went quite a bit over, so I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you so much for tuning in. Again, I really appreciate it if you made it towards the end. I'm going to keep trying to rev out more content for y'all, and I really hope you found this valuable. Please like and subscribe if you did, and I hope to see you next time. Peace.